If they don't see income, the youngsters are not going to stay back in the field. It is only the old farmers who are still sticking to their own practices. The youngsters are looking at dreaming big about moving to cities and trying to do various things.
People underappreciate, the fact that it's the whole value chain, all the way down to the livelihood of the farmers.
1/3 of the food that is produced in the world is actually wasted. If we are able to organize and reduce food wastage, that can feed 2 billion people. After harvest, we opened the shell and there was no nut inside.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Beyond the Boardroom, a series where we get to know more about companies listed on the Singapore Exchange and their key appointment holders. I'm Natalie Ong, Equity Analyst with CGS International, and with me is CEO of CGS International Singapore, Mr. Malcolm Khoo. In this episode, we turn the spotlight on Olam Group. Olam is in the global agribusiness and is one of the largest companies by revenue and market cap on the SGX. It is present in over 60 countries and is a leading merchant of food and agricultural products such as rice, grains, cocoa, coffee, and cotton. So hi Muthu, how are you today?
Hi, thank you, Natalie. Great morning and happy to meet both of you here in our office and our cozy library.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Okay, so let's jump right into it. As a global agribusiness, you help shape the future of food by addressing changes in consumer preferences and meeting that demand. So can you tell us more about food trends that are currently shaking up the food industry, and how does Olam assess and react to these changing consumer preferences?
Olam as a global food and agricultural raw material and processed food supplier across the globe, what we do typically is to source food staples primarily from where it is grown, and we supply to countries and people where it is required and consumed. So that's essentially, very simplistically put, our business. However, what really makes us quite different is that the purpose for us is to really build very strong global food, feed and fiber agricultural systems in a very sustainable manner, which will address the prosperity and the longevity of the smallholder farmers, who are the lifeblood for our food systems. And typically over the last 35 years that we have operated as Olam, started in 1989 and we listed in Singapore Stock Exchange in 2005, we are now present in more than 67 countries and directly and indirectly engage with smallholder farmers, more than 4 million of them.
Wow, that's a lot.
And that is something which gives us a lot of pride. In a growing environment in terms of population, we crossed 7 billion people in November of 2024, likely to be 9 billion people by 2050 and 11 billion people by 2100. We are able to really work strongly with the smallholder farmers to ensure that they stay back in their villages. They make their own money by practicing modern agricultural practices, have high yielding varietals of seeds, thereby their yield is growing, they are able to make more money, and they are happy to produce more food for the ever-growing population.
Maybe you can just give us one example of how you help, some of these small stakeholders or farmers, to improve, their agricultural technique.
Great question, Malcolm. See, we have seen large growers in developed markets like US, Argentina, Brazil, Australia, etc. But the 1/3 of the global food is produced by the smallholder farmers. And they typically own roughly a hectare or two. So they do not have the size and scale to adopt modern agronomical practices. So how do you help them in ensuring that they are able to really look forward to producing something very different? And how do you ensure that you are able to engage? We have a 10,000 hectare land bank. Out of this 4,700 hectares, we are doing as a corporate farm. But more importantly, there are around 60,000 farmers, what we call as nucleus cultivation, where we engage with the smallholder farmers around our corporate land bank and help them in modern agricultural practices, agronomical practices, tell them what to do when, and an average of 2 tons per hectare of yield, which is Nigeria is witnessing, today they have doubled to 4 tons a hectare. If you look at China, it is 7 tons a hectare. So that is one example where I can clearly tell you that we are directly impacted in growing the yield for a smallholder farmer.
And that means better income for the farmers as well.
Yeah, so if they don't see income, the youngsters are not going to stay back in the fields. It is only the old farmers who are still sticking to their own practices. The youngsters are looking at dreaming big about moving to cities and trying to do various things. But the essence of all our livelihood depends on how much more food we can produce and sustainably.
And I know you guys have something called like the living income calculator. Tell us a little bit more about this living income calculator, how it's supposed to help ensure that the farmers, the small people, the small guys are also being able to feed their families.
So 1/3 of the world's food is produced by smallholder farmers, as I talked about. And roughly 1/3 of them are below the poverty line, as defined by the United Nations. And if you really look at it, the poverty line, anybody who's earning less than $2 a day for a family of 4 are defined as a family below poverty line. And the living income is something which is roughly 2 to 2.5 times above the poverty line. So we are talking about somewhere between $6 and $7 a day of income for a family of 4 who are actually producing food for the world. So our endeavor is that in every geography, in every field that we operate on, we want to ensure at least the smallholder farmers with whom we interact, they move away from the poverty line to at least meet the living income indicator.
A very noble desire to help all our farmers who are actually feeding us, the world population.
Yeah.
So that's something that I think most people know Olam as a really big and significant agri player. But maybe people underappreciate, the fact that it's the whole value chain, all the way down to the livelihood of the farmers and all the way about improving the incomes, improving the yield, teaching them modern techniques. So on that note, maybe let's talk a bit on ESG. There's always buzzword about upcycling, recycling, with regards to the projects. And I think we also read, in the news that you do have some projects, in rice and in projects like biochar. Maybe some of these projects, can we have a better understanding on what Olam is trying to do, in some of the projects, and how does it resonate well with, what you're trying to do, on the trading side of the business as well?
Now, 1/3 of the world's emission of greenhouse gases is from the food and agriculture systems. And 1/3 of the food that is produced in the world is actually wasted before it moves from post-harvest to the market. So if all of the food waste that is happening in the world, which is the 1/3 of the food that is produced, is carved out as a country, it will be the 3rd biggest country after US and China to emanate greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay.
So there's so much of food that is produced. If we are able to organize and reduce food wastage, that can feed 2 billion people. Now, how do we do that? The first is, there is a significant biodiversity collapse. The world talks about climate change. It is true, and it has catastrophic impacts. But more importantly, people who do not appreciate is the biodiversity collapse. Earth scientists say that we cannot lose more than 10 species in a year. Today, we lose roughly 1,000 species a year. And that will dramatically reduce our ability to produce food going forward. End of COVID, when Australia was actually banning the movement of honeybees from one state to another, from New South Wales to Victoria State, we had a devastating effort. After harvest, we opened the shell, and there was no nut inside. We had to take $100 million write-off that year.
But curious, how do they prevent the bees from flying interstate?
So, the bees are very finicky characters.
Yeah.
Whatever motivation you do, they will not do over time. So we have to keep them very happy, very motivated, in a happy state of mind for them to help pollinate. These tiny tot insects, which we ignore in our day-to-day life, are so important for our essential everyday livelihood.
So remember, I think next time you eat one almond, there's so much effort that goes into.
Please thank all the honeybees.
But I think we're also seeing a decline in population size. I mean, could this pose as a risk for Olam, and what kind of new products, segments, opportunities do you see for the group?
So the developed markets like US, Europe, Japan, obviously are seeing a declining population. But that is not true for the developing economies. Between now and 2050 to 2.5 billion people, and that to very young people. Asia will continue to grow till 2050 before it starts declining. So there is still a secular growth in population overall as the globe, and particularly in Africa and Asia. The rest of the continents are already seeing decline in population, and that is going to be a continuing trend. So we are, as Olam, very well entrenched in Africa and Asia. So we believe that we have a pole position to look at the growing trends of change in dietary habits that I talked about earlier, and we are well positioned to take advantage of that. But more importantly, it is not only about having a corporate objective of being profitable, but more importantly, ability to meaningfully contribute on a global basis to leave this a better world, to have food production in a sustainable manner that our future generations will thank us for. So that is the most important thing that we are looking at. So demand is very predictable because there is a growing population, there is change in dietary habits. We are clearly seeing urbanization. More people are looking at more animal feed-based, animal protein food, and modern grains like I talked about, wheat, corn, rice. So we are very clear about demand, but supply is very unpredictable because of climate change, biodiversity collapse, the geopolitical tensions that are happening, whether it is a US-China tariff war, whether it is hopefully what has now had a temporary truce in Israel and Hamas Middle Eastern crisis. So supply is actually going to be key rather than demand. There is going to be growing demand for food, secular trend that we are very clearly seeing, challenges supply. So what we did was we did a digital and sustainable linked platform, in-house platform, wherein we reach every single smallholder farmer, corn producer in Medan. We have more than 30,000 farmers now on the platform. And they go and directly look at the price. First is there is a price transparency. So the maximum amount of price that the cost or the realization that need to have, they are able to get because they are able to see the market price in their smartphone. The second is every day they get a nudge on what you have to do in your small field today, whether you have to apply pesticide, whether you have to cut weed, you have to do weeding, whether you have to apply fertilizer, whether you have to water. Every day, depending on their micro climate, we give them nudges every day. The third is as soon as they have even a bag of corn ready, which is like 50 kilos, we are able to send somebody to collect it from them within 2 to 3 kilometer radius. Otherwise, historically, they have to take it in a cart, hand-driven cart or a bullock cart or a cycle, and take it to 5-10 kilometers to deliver this bag of corn. Today, it is within a 2 kilometer radius, we are able to collect it within a day, and then do quality check, do a QR code, and stick it, and scan and send. All details will come to their smartphone about the quality, the humidity, everything, and the price is very clearly said, okay, you delivered 48.2 kilos, you had so much of humidity, you had so much of foreign material, etc., etc. This is the value of your bag of corn that you have delivered. You want to take it or not? They say yes, automatically that is approved by us and taken as Jiva's goods, and a goods received note is triggered electronically, and a payment is made the next day into their bank account, cashless. And like this, we are able to collect it. And today we are able to give it to corn millers within 5 to 7 days, down from 30 to 40 days.
Oh.
And the corn millers are extremely happy because the counterparty is Jiva or Olam, and they are not having hundreds of distributors whose counterparty will always be in question because price is key. So this is just an example of what we are trying to do, and this we want to replicate across the world.
You can see how that actually really makes the lives of the farmers a lot easier, and also the food wastage part reduces the time to store.
Better agronomical practices, timely advice, keep the farmers focused on what they have to do, get the yield, give them the fair price, get the ultimate consumer the food and agricultural raw materials sooner than later.
Yeah. While we were talking about a lot of different food trends and alternative meat, what is the most adventurous dish that you guys have been offered? And also, did you try it?
Oh, I'm a vegetarian first, so I can recollect a couple of instances. When I was in Nigeria, it was during this Ramadan period, and they offer a feast after that. And the first time I saw it was a goat's head, okay, carved open, and the brain has been cooked with some curry, and they offered with the eye. The goat has got horns and has got eyes, and it is got far outside, but only the brain has been carved out and cooked, and offered to me. And it is supposed to be a delicacy and is a matter of honor. So that was one. I didn't take it.
How about you, Malcolm? Any interesting food stories or anything?
I think I was brought to a Japanese hot pot place in Tokyo, and I couldn't read a word of Japanese. And in that restaurant, they were famous for exotic animal parts.
Okay.
And the hot pot came. The things looks very strange in the hot pot, and I just asked, a client of ours who booked that restaurant, said, by the way, what are we having? And then he go on the whole laundry list of different parts of a horse, of which I told him that, actually today I'm vegetarian. So they kindly brought a vegetarian, hot pot, because I think there's something not my cup of tea, but there's enough ordinary food out there.
Okay. So the saying, you are what you eat and health is wealth. So do you guys adhere to any diet? Like, I know you're vegetarian, so do you have any healthy eating advice for all of us?
Even though I was born vegetarian, I'm continuing to be a vegetarian. I dramatically shifted something similar to what they call as a keto diet.
Okay.
So basically it is no carbs and no dairy, no sugar.
But it's a lot harder to achieve as a vegetarian, right?
It is. It is. So, but then over time you get used to it.
Thanks, Muthu. What about you, Malcolm?
Yeah, for me it's quite simple. Every year when I buy new clothes, it's always the same size for my pants and a shirt. If it's a bit too tight, I go for intermittent fasting, for a couple of weeks, to get it back down. But other than that, I think it's low carbs for me, no sugar. I've not taken this sugar seriously for the last 10 years. And I think that helps to keep the weight in check. At the end of the day, I think what you want is also a balanced diet, right? A balance, between what you need in terms of protein and also what you need in terms of, your water need. Right? I believe in having good water source, clean water and enough water, and stay yourself hydrated.
What does the future of Olam look like?
Bright. There is a secular linear demand for food and agricultural raw materials and food. And that is something, and there is a linear trend of growing population, and that too in developing markets in Asia and Africa. And as a global food and agricultural player, being well positioned in Africa and Asia, we believe that the future is never looked brighter. Obviously, there are challenges on the supply side that I talked about, but that is where our expertise, our competencies, our collective will bring to bear to ensure that we are uniquely positioned, competitively differentiated from other global players, to ensure that we are able to convert these challenges into opportunities, which we believe we have the right strategy in place, the right set of people in place. And I'm excited that the future of Olam, which we have had a great 35 years, and I think we are poised to paint the next chapter.
And it really seems like your heart is in the right place. I think with regard to helping the small guys, and also with regard to food safety, food security, and sustainability, so I think the heart is in the right place.
I think one thing I really like about Olam, after hearing from you, it's the emphasis on the small stakeholders. think very, very few people realize or appreciate the fact that there's so much effort that's put into the small stakeholders, all the way down to the beekeepers. If there's something that you have as your extreme passion with regards to Olam, in one focus area that you have extreme passion, what is it?
It is about creating impact for the smallholder farmer. The first time when we gave them cash salary as a fortnightly salary, and I was there, and there were tears in the eyes of the women who were actually for the first time seeing something like a currency in their hand, which they have never seen in their lifetime. And the second time was when we were putting up solar lamps in their villages, because there are only 10 houses, and then there is 50-60 kilometers, another 10 houses. No government can set up street lights and all of these things. In the community where we were putting up solar lamps, and we are putting water pumps. First time in their life they were getting clean water, and after 6 p.m. they were able to see life. Otherwise after 6 p.m. the light is closed because it's dark. So those are fundamental things that I have witnessed myself, the kind of impact that we have created. We all talk about numbers and profitability and future and all of that. There are very few forums like this, which allow us to explain the company behind the company, the people behind the company, and what we really stand for, and what we believe it's the right thing to do. And I think this Beyond the Boardroom hopefully will bring other corporates also to life. And I wish you both all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you, Muthu and Malcolm, for your insights. And that is it for this episode of Beyond the Boardroom. Stay tuned for exclusive interviews and behind-the-scene insights.